Right.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Today is Wednesday, November 2nd, already Shmini Lecheshvan, or it is Shmini Lecheshvan. And I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Moshe and Judy Stein, who are sponsoring this evening's shiur and the shiurim throughout the week in observance of the yortzeit of Judy's mother, Golda Bat Mordechai Halevi, Zichrono Livracha, Gertrude Kavon, whose yortzeit was on the 6th of Mar Cheshvan. Yehi Zichra Baruch. Thank you very much, Judy and Moshe.
All right. Thank you, Judy and Moshe. We're returning to the halachos of Chanuka. And tonight I want to discuss that during Chanuka, in both Shmon Esrei as well as Birkat HaMazon benching, we insert Al HaNissim. There's an interesting halacha with regard to Al HaNissim, because we're used to the fact that, for instance, if one forgets to say Yala V'yavo or in Shmon Esrei or Birkat HaMazon, he has to go back and Mashiv HaRuach and saying Talumata. There are all sorts of halachas. But the halacha with regard to Al HaNissim is that no one is obligated to go back and say either Shmona Esrei and or Birkat HaMazon again while inserting Al HaNissim. And the question is, why is this the halacha? In other words, why is there no obligation to insert Al HaNissim if one forgot it? So it appears in the Tosefta, the halacha appears in the Tosefta, which says straight out that if one forgot Al HaNissim, there is no requirement that he go back and reinsert it. The Rif, the Rambam, and Tosfos paskin this way, most probably because if one thinks about it, Chanukah is not a moed. In other words, there's no Isur Malacha, it's not mentioned in the Torah, there's no special korban, and therefore the need to mention Al HaNissim in Tefillah is less stringent than it would be on a yontif. That's one reason. Rav Melamed in his Penine Halacha says the following. One second. Here it is. Avol tov avolim kfar or ma'achem Hashem. In other words, if he here the imlo or mara al HaNissim, if he did not include al HaNissim, but tefillah b'birkas hamazon in either Shmon Esrei or benching, eno chozer, he does not go back. V'yim diskar lifnei shesiyem et habracha. So in Shmon Esrei, before he said Hatov Shimcho Lachon Al Hodot, or in benching, before he said Al Haaretz V'Al HaMazon, Shomrim Bo Al HaNissim, Yachzor Loma Al HaNissim. Then you go back and you insert Al HaNissim, and then you say V'Chol HaChayim, V'Al Kulam Yisparach Yisroam, etc., or you say V'Al Kol in benching, and you insert Al HaNissim. Avol im kfar or mashem Hashem. In other words, if he said Baruch Atah Hashem, and it's already said God's name, even if he didn't finish the bracha, then he doesn't go back. Lo yachzor. And then he adds the following. Avol tov, it's a good practice. Sheyoma al HaNissim b'siyum hatfilah, lacha siyum habrachot. In other words, after he says Hamavarich es Amo Yisrael b'Shalom, or after he says Al Yechasreinu in benching, he should then add Al HaNissim, Shesham Mutal Osif Tachnunim V'Hodah Kitzono. In fact, if you look at a siddur in Shmon Esrei, that's one of the reasons that before Elokai Nitzar, it says Yiyu L'Ratzon Imreifi Ve'Egyoni Milfanecha Hashem Tzu V'Goali, because that represents the end of the Amidah. Elokai Nitzor is some additional tchino tachnunim that you say, but the end of the I'm sorry, the end of Shmon Esrei is Yi L'Ratzonim Reifi. Now, most people don't necessarily say Yi L'Ratzonim Reifi at this point for the simple reason that they're not used to, in other words, there's no need to say it there because they'll end the Shmon Esrei at the end of Elokai Nitzar. However, if they want to add Al HaNissim, they can simply say before Elokai Nitzar Yi L'Ratzon Rifi V'Yigoli B'Lefanecha Hashem Tzuri V'Gali HaNissim V'Apurkam V'Akvurus V'Achuas, etc. Say it there. And also in benching, he can say it at the end, together with Harachman, that he can add it, and we're going to see that there's a special. It's Rav Rimon brings down a special nusach of Harachman that you say. But where? I just told you where, but why do we insert it in what's known as the brachot of Hodah, the brachot of Thanksgiving? In other words, in benching we say it after Noda. Noda is the bracha of Hodah, right? And in Shmon Esrei, we say it after Modim, which is V'chol HaChayim. Why is it inserted there? So, of course, the Gemara tells us that that's where you're supposed to insert it, but what's the basis for the halacha? Wouldn't it be more logical to insert it in the bracha of Ritzei and in the bracha of Bonei Yerushalayim? Because what happened? We got back to Mikdash. We got back to the Mikdash. So wouldn't it make sense to include it in the brachas about the Mikdash, right? So why don't we say it in V'Yerushalayim or in why don't we say it in Bonei Yerushalayim and Shmona Esrei, or I'm sorry, in Ritzei, right? Or in Bonei Yerushalayim in Ritzei Hashem, which is the bracha of V'Sechazeno Einenu B'Shuvcha L'Tzion Bracha V'Ruchto Hashem HaMachazir Shchinaso L'Tzion, right? Because the what do you call it? The miracle occurred in the Mikdash. So Rav Rimon in his Sefer gives two reasons for why we don't say it there. So first he says, let me just get to the right page. Sorry, 1 second. First, he says the following: Hagemara omeret shemaskirim et al HaNissim b'virchat hodah, right? Hatoshim chol echon el hodot, or in Noda. Madua lo omrim al HaNissim b'virchas ritzei, right? Hamit yacheset levinyan Yerushalayim v'hamikdash, which is on the topic of rebuilding the Mikdash and Yerushalayim. Geshem shemaskirim bo yala v'yavo. That's where we say yala v'yavo on a yontif. Nitan lahasbir b'tzura pshuta. Says this simple. First, there's a simple explanation for it. Sheyala v'yavo ne'ema b'chagim min haTorah. The yala v'yavo is said in Ritzei because it's a moed that's mentioned in the Torah. Shemakrivim b'hen korbanot b'veit hamikdash, where we bring korbanot in the mikdash. V'lochein matim loma otam bracha b'virchat ha'avoda. So we say yala v'yavo in the bracha of avoda, which is ritzei. V'dava ze lo shayach b'Chanuka. There's no moed. It's not a moed. There's no isur malacha. It's not called a moed in the Torah. And besides with, it is not, there's no separate korban, right? We light a menorah, but there's no korban. The next reason is, Birkas moadim yacheset bi'ikal l'nisim hanistarim. Okay? Al nisayo nisecha shebecho yom mimona. When we say modim, right, what do we say in modim? We say, Modim anachnu lach, etc. Nodel lechon esape to lesecha chayenu hamsurim biyadecha, our lives that are given to you, val nishposenu habkudos lach, and our souls that we give you, val nisecha shebechol yom imono, val niflosecha v'tovasecha shebechol eis erev avoka. Modim already has the subject matter or the subject matter of nisim in it. So says Rav Rimon, it makes sense. What are we doing when we say al nisim? Hiskarnu et nisim anistoram v'hechavnu b'mashmutam v'chashivutam. We're already talking about nisim, so we add al hanisim to that. Mahudah shel birchat hahoda'ah hi lechapes et hachodesh baruch hu b'soch otam dvarim hanirim tiviyim. What is Modim all about? He says Modim is all about that we are looking for the presence of the Ribono Shalom in nature, in natural things. All the things that happen in the ordinary course of our lives, we are thanking the Ribono Shalom in Modim. Nes hanitzachon b'milchama, a victory in this war, v'hu nes atzum, is a great miracle, right? However, it is hitbonanut beteva marelenu ketzad hakodesh baruch hu omeid me'acharei hakol upoel hakol. At the end of the day, the victory is a natural, if I could use it, phenomenon. It's something that happens. It's not a nes, nistar or something. It's a nest that happens in the course of life. We are looking, it is something that happens in the ordinary course of life, and we are looking for it in the ordinary course. We want to understand the great miracle that has occurred in the ordinary course of our lives. And that's what Modim talks about. Excuse me. And that's why we say it in Birchas Hodah. He says that since we are celebrating what appears to be a natural victory, and the obligation is to understand the miraculous nature, the hidden miraculous nature of the miracle, the fact that the victory appears to be a natural event explains the lack of the appearance of the Shem Hashem and HaNissim. He says, if you take a look at HaNissim, he says the following. Since it's a natural thing that's happened, we can explain something. If you go to the nusach, the verbiage of HaNissim, Nigalesh Sham Hashem no niskarbo. HaNissim, Valapurkam, Valachuas, etc. Yimei Matisyo, etc., etc. God's name does not appear in it. Omnam, Yesh Peniya, Yeshira, El Hashem. There is a direct request or facing of Hashem or call to Hashem. Sha'asisa lavasenu. We say to the Ribono Shalom, you were there for our forefathers. You are there. And we've made you, we've called out to you, etc., etc. Notwithstanding all of that, Shem Hashem Eino Niskar. We don't say HaNissim Valapurkan, Shasisa Hashem Elokeinu Lanu Velavosenu. We just say HaNissim Valapurkan Vagvus Vachuos. V'lecha Asisha Shem God Uvechozot Shem Hashem Eino Niskar. Both in Pashut. Why is this? Hasiba Lakach Hi Shekivan HaNissim Hu Chelek Miberchas Haladah. Since it's part of the bracha of Hodah Modim Anachnu Lach Hashem, right? Haresh Kvar Hiskarnu Modim Anachnu Lecha Sha'atahu Hashem Elokeinu. We've already said it. U'lachein ein tzorech b'hazkara nosefet. You don't have to mention God's name again. Ach yitachein, says Rav Rimon, it could be possible. Shedava zeh mishakef et ha'uvda, it represents the fact shegam milchama haya gam haya nes tivi, that what happened in the battle was a natural event. Kishem shekosvu hagaonim, sheshem Hashem lo nizkar b'Megillat Esther, kidei l'remo shehaya nes tivi. Right? Where else do we find this? We find this in Megillat Esther, right? The name of Hashem does not appear in the Megillat Esther. Chazal say that it does not appear. One of the explanations is that it does not appear in Megillat Esther because what happened in Megillat Esther was natural. It was a miracle, but it was a natural miracle. It wasn't something outside of the natural order. And our job is to look for God in this miracle, who resides off screen, off stage, so to speak. Odef Shalav Siv, he says, one could add to this explanation. Sheyesh livchon et amirat HaNissim hi tosefet shel me'ein hamora mo b'Shabbat u'v'yom tov. Is this something, is HaNissim part of an extraordinary day, like we say Ritzei, or things we say on Shabbos, or Yala v'Yavo on Yom Tov? O shema chovat hazkarata mipnei shechelik mechovat hahoda'ah b'Chanukah hilafaret et HaNissim shehidrachashu. Or maybe our obligation is to just simply recite what the miracles were. But it's not because the day itself is a holy day, right? We say Ritzei, or we say Yalev Yavo, because the day itself is holy. The day of Chanuka itself is not holy. What's the perfect proof of that? There's no Isur Melacha, right? Lo Shona Toseftahi, Shemaskirim Me'ein HaMorah, right? We do talk about the day. Ulami divrei Rashi sheyuval lahala nira sheyesh kan din acher shechovah pirut HaNissim b'Haodar. Rashi says no, it's not the day itself which is holy. What the day is mechayev is calling forth and setting forth what the miracles of the day are. Sharei lahala ulhada nikva. We have to praise the Ribono Shalom for what he did on the day, but not because the day itself is holy. What is special about the day is the Nisim, the Niflaot that happened on the day. Lozo, Muvam Madua Lo Omrim Al Nisim B'Ritzei. Why don't we say it in Shmon Esrei in Ritzei? Sharei Ein Izkur She'ein Me'ein HaMorah Ela Izkur Ba'al Ofi Acher. What we're talking about is not the holiness of the day. We're talking about something else. What we are talking about are the miracles that occur. Chovat pirut nisim hamarchivat hoda al nisim shebecho yomi manu, which is simply for this day, right? What do we say? We say that in Modim, val nisecha shebecho yom imanu, we're just on this day detailing what those miracles are. And so therefore, HaNissim refers to the specifics of the Nisim, but not to the specifics of the day. And we have to thank God for the miracles, but it's not, the day does not cause that. What happened in the day is what causes. Okay? There also appears to be another interesting halacha or anomaly when it comes to the insertion of HaNissim. We insert it, as we say in Shmona Esrei, and in Birkat HaMazon, as we said, but there is no insertion in what is known as Birkat Mein HaShalosh, which in common parlance is referred to as Al HaMichya. We may make no insertion in Al HaMichya about Chanuka or about Purim for that matter. Why is that? There are various explanations which are offered, and I'll tell you some of them. The Lavush answers that, whose name was Harav, I forget exactly, Avram Yaffa, I believe, was a well-known Achron, that HaNissim is, as we have already said, a Birkat HaDa'ah. And if you take a look at Birkat at the Rachav Al HaMichya, right? There is no Birkat HaDa'ah. What we say, hold it, let me just get Al HaMichya. Sorry. Okay. Michiva Kakola Geffen Al Priya Geffen Val Tunuvas Hasoda Veretz Chem de Tovu Rechova Rish Tzisa Vim Chalta Lavo Seinu Lechol Mivitzbo Rachem No Hashem Ala Yisrael Mechla Yisrael V'Mizbechech V'Hechalecha Uvnei Yerushalayim HaKodesh V'Meir V'Aleinu L'Socha Ki Atah Hashem Tovu Meitiv V'Noda Lecha Ala Oretz V'Ala Michya. So he says there is no section or specific section of Ala Michya, which is a Birkat Hodah, and therefore HaNissim, which is a Birkat Hodah, is not mentioned or included. Rav Soloveitchik has a somewhat different and complicated explanation, which I will not go into fully, but will summarize as follows. Shabbat and Yom Tov, as we saw before, Me'in HaMorah, have Kedushat Hayom. They're holy days. And Ritzei and Yalav Yavo are, in effect, he says, and he brings a proof from the fact that if you forgot them, there's a special bracha that you say, but Ritzei and Yalav Yavo are, in effect, the brachot that signify those days. And therefore, one is required to go back in some fashion to insert them if, as and when, they are forgotten. Chanuka, on the other hand, has no, as we've said, no Kedushat Hayom. It's a day when miracles happen, but the day in and of itself has no Kedushat Hayom. And therefore, our HaNissim is simply a recognition that today is Chanuka. Since HaNissim is simply a mention of the day and not an essential requirement of benching, it is not mentioned in Al HaMichya, which only contains a short form, or in a short form, the essential requirements of Birkat HaMazon, and therefore there's no need to include Al HaNissim. Rav Rimon adds an additional explanation. He posits that, in effect, the obligation to make mention of the miracle is covered, as I said, in Modim on the Secha Shebechol Yom. So, therefore, in Shmona Esrei, there's no need to go back. And there's no need in benching to go back. If he forgot and remembers it, and this he adds, in both situations, he says the following. You should go back. 1 second. One second. Sorry. That he do the following. I apologize. I made a note, and my note is wrong. second. All right. What he says is what we said before, that you should go back. Oh. Then he says, Berchas HaMazon. I apologize. Oh, I know why I'm having a hard time. I'm looking in the wrong sefer. That won't work. Okay. So he says the following. If you remember before the end of Shemona Esrei, then suggests Rav Rimon that he do the following. Mikol Mokom Yesh Lo Ma HaNissim B'Elokei Nitzor. We saw this. Lifnei Yirotav Hasheni B'Nusach Harachman Yaseh Lonu Nisim V'Niflaot Kishem Sho'asita Lavotenu Bayomim Hahem B'Zman Hazeh B'Mei Matityo Ben Yochanan Kohen Gadol. In other words, he changes the he changes the nusach, and instead of saying al HaNissim v'al HaPurkan, he doesn't start that way. Harachman yaseh lanu nisim v'niflaot kishem sho'asisa lavosenu b'yamim ha'hem b'azman hazeh, not al HaNissim v'al HaPurkan v'al Gvuz hachuas, etc. And that's what he adds. And then he says the following. The Ramah Paskins, Ramah Kotev, Shemisha Shochach Lan Loma Al HaNissim B'Virchas HaMazon, Yochol Osifa B'Harachman. And he says, Harachman Yaseh Lonu Nisim V'Kemosha Asala V'Sim B'Yomim Hazeh B'Mamat Yahu, similar to what he did in Shemona Esrei. L'chura Yesh B'Nisuach Zeh, there's a difference. In other words, you say Harachaman, and you do not say Al HaNissim the way we say it in Modim. Shel Tefila ala Asid. Harachman Hu Yasa. In other words, we don't say Al HaNissim Val Niflos Val Chuvos but rather we ask the Ribono Shalom that he should do miracles for us. Why is that? Why does he say that? Dover Mayenu Sheba Maseches Sofrim Beseder Rav Amram Go Sitter B'Machzor Vitri Ubenusachim Nosafim Mosifim Tamid B'Sof Al HaNissim Bakasha La'atid. This is Lezecha what they did there. What did they do? They had in their Sidurim Ucheshem She'asita Imahem Neis. In the same fashion, they would add this. In the same fashion that you did a nes with the Chashmonaim or with Esther and Mordechai, Cain asay imanu Hashem Elokeinu nisim v'nofaos be'et hazos v'nodel lishmecha hagadol selah. So they asked, either contemporaneously with when you're saying it, or in the future, that the Ribono Shalom should do additional miracles. Rishonim Rabim Hitnagdu Lahosafa Zu B'Tfila. There were many Rishonim who were opposed to this. Mishum she'ein mevakshim bakashot b'shalosh habrachot ha'achronot. Why? Because in Shemona Esrei, the place to ask for things are in the 13 middle brachot, right? In Shema Kolenu, in Rifa'enu, in any bracha you can ask for something, but you don't ask for something in the last three brachot. So when they said, "Ushem she'asita imayim neis kain asei imanu," you should do it for us. That's a bakasha. That's a request of the Ribono Shalom, and that doesn't belong there. V'chein nifsak b'shulchan aruch, that you don't ask bakashot in the last three bar. Ulam ka'et nitain lahavin, madua katav harama, kishe'omrim HaNissim b'harachaman, when you say, right, well, how did he say you should say it after Yiyu l'rotzon? He said you should say, Harachman hu yaselon in the future. Why is that? Omrim nusach sheyesh bo bakashal atid. Omnam bevirchas hoda betfila ubevirchas nodelecha bevirchas hamashlon efshel levakesh bakashot. That's why he said that you should ask for either contemporaneously or in the future if you forget it, because then it's after the last three brachot or after no delecha in birkas hamazon. Ach kasher nimtzaim bechelek habakashot shebesof birkas hamazon, harachman hu yachilenu, harachman hu yimloch aleinu, whatever we say, those are all bakashot. אך כאשר נמצא בחלק הבקשות שבסוף ברכת המזון, ובוודאי ניתן להוסיף בקשות על העתיד, ולבקש מהשם שיעשה לנו ניסים גם בזמן הזה. Therefore, it's appropriate there, but it is not appropriate to say it at the end. In other words, to add something in the future or contemporaneously, if you're saying your Hodah in Shmona Esrei and or in Birchat Hamazon. So those are the halachas with regard to Al HaNissim. And next time we'll take up another aspect of the tefillot. Anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to take them. If not, I wish everybody a good night.
Suddenly you're mute, Barry.
I'm mute? I'm mute?
All right. Okay. Thank
Have
you.
a good evening, everyone.
Does anybody have any comments? Thank you again to Judy and Moshe. And I'll do my best to upload today's Zoom in case anybody wants to rewatch or if you have friends who want to watch after the fact.
All right. Be well, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.